Hi, welcome to the Gamesplainer. I'm Jeff the Gamesplainer and today I'm gamesplaining Raxxon. In the game of Raxxon, everyone is working together to defeat the zombie apocalypse or at least survive it. We are fighting against the Raxxon pharmaceutical company, which are represented by these cards, and their influence is represented by this track. If the tracker gets to 8, the Raxxon pharmaceutical company has become powerful enough to basically take over, which is what we are trying to work against. The start of each turn looks like setting up this tableau. This is set up for a 2-player game. If you were setting up for a larger player count game, so 3 players, it would be a 4th column of people in the crowd. And if you're setting up for 4 players, it would be 4 by 4. There will be things or actions that that either force you or enable you, depending on which way you want to look at it, to bring more players, more crowd people into the crowd. There's a maximum size of 6 by 6 when you do that. Each player will have a player board that represents them. Each one has a character on it that is different. There are 6 different characters in the game. There's the other 3. So that will give you a little bit more replayability and difference each time you play. On those character sheets, there is a list of things that can happen or things that you can do. There is one character-specific skill on each character's sheet, and the rest of them, while they look pretty much the same, can be slightly different. On your turn, you will choose one of your skills to enact, and that's the next player's turn. If you choose not to do anything, you can pass, but once you've passed, you're not able to get back into the game until the next day. Everyone has the top investigate action on their card. That is a free action. When I say a free action, you'll notice every other one of the skill areas has these little markers next to it. What they do is when you take one of those actions, you will place a token on top of that. Then at the beginning of your turn, before you take any of the actions, you will work your way down the board and enact whatever is marked, whatever the icon is above wherever any of those tokens are. And I'll go through what that iconography means in a moment. So the first action, the investigate action, which is listed just at the top as a reminder, has an icon on it, which means that when you see that icon or you have to enact that icon, you're going to flip a card over. So any of these face down cards, you get flipped. That's probably going to need to be the first thing that happens in any day, because you need to know what you're up against, how many of these are actually infected and how many are not infected. So as you can see, I've turned over a healthy person. They are hostile, but they are healthy. So this is someone who needs to be saved. When you flip over a card, if you see this icon, that means that it's something that will happen when the card is first sighted, which is right now. And this is what happens when we flip the card over. So if there are 2 hostile cards present on the tableau, we would then flip over another card. As you can see, there's only the 1 hostile card present on the tableau at the moment, so we don't actually do anything with that. If the next card we turned over was this one, then we would need to flip a further card. This next card that I've just flipped has this little skull and crossbones marking on it. What that means is if this card dies, then you go across and have a look at the actual text, and that will probably most likely be a negative thing that will happen. And these titles, all of them have slightly different things written down the bottom. So I'm not too worried about reading that at the moment, because you'll get to them when they die, if they die. Your job is to not let them die. How do we not let them die? We don't let them die by using the evacuation. The way that we evacuate is that we take a row or a column where all of the cards are flipped up. So at the moment, we wouldn't be able to use that evacuation skill. If that is what the tableau looked like, we would still not be able to use the evacuation skill, because we need to evacuate an entire row or column. What we could do is use another skill to swap. So what I did was the crowd control skill, where you get to swap 2 cards that are in the crowd. So what I did is swap there with crowd control. Each crowd control is slightly different, but that's the essence of it. Now I have available 1 entire row that can be evacuated. So the next person who chooses to use their evacuate, imagine it's Brian, he'll put his token on the evacuate. So you notice each person's only going to be able to do the evacuation skill twice. Unless you're Olivia Brown, then you only get to do it once. When you do that evacuation skill, you take all of the cards from that row or column and move them up into the evacuation pile. It's as simple as that. So in essence, what you're trying to do is manipulate the crowd to get them into those rows or columns so you can evacuate. Other skills that are present on the card, I'll work my way down, is attack or airstrike. Some are called airstrike, some are called attack. They have a very similar thing where they allow you to kill one of the cards or a row of cards. So at the moment, I'd probably want to get rid of this one. Now, if I kill it, what that looks like is actually putting it up into the pile just up there, which is called the population discard pile. And you'll see what happens with that in a second. Some of the airstrike skills call for you to kill one of the rows or columns. So if one of the healthy guys is in that row or column that you're killing, then you might have a negative effect that comes with it that I was pointing out earlier. So now we've got another infected person there. We can use the quarantine action. So every quarantine action is slightly different. And what you get to do with the quarantine action is take the card that has the disease and put them in the contained quarantine space. That way they're out of the way, we don't have to worry about them anymore. That's all of the actions that everyone has. Each person, each character has their own special action. So in the case of Olivia Brown, she has some experimental treatments which allow her to do something a little bit different to everyone else. Brian Lee, who's over here, gets to go door to door, and Meryl Wolf is able to interview. Interviewing is picking up a card, having a look at it, and putting it back face down so you can see what's there without actually revealing it. That's all of those skills. Now, back to our icons. You'll notice that I've got 4 hostile cards in here. When I had 2, I would have had to reveal another one. When I reveal another one, that happened to be a hostile as well, so I've got 2, I would need to reveal another one. Now what I've got is 4 hostiles. This marking in the bottom right hand corner tells us that that has actually caused us to go to a night phase, which ends our day phase. So that is the end of this round when that happens. And you'll notice that on the bottom of some of the disease cards, we also have that 3 of them of the same type, that's volatile in this case, would cause the night phase to happen. What the night phase looks like is looking at your tableau. Any cards that are still face down, you would turn them up. Look at your tableau, and if there's any diseases in there, so let's imagine that's our tableau. 1 disease, we take 1 more card out of that top deck or the infected supply. That comes into the population discard pile. All of the cards in our current crowd go into that same pile with the cards that I've just picked up. We then shuffle that back into our population deck. Once we've shuffled into the population deck, we will then set out a new tableau, a new crowd for us to come up against. So what's happened is the percentage of diseased cards in this deck has grown and will grow every turn if we leave diseases on the board. If we can get all the diseases off here, then no more will come into that deck from the disease deck. The next thing we do before we start the next round is we take any cards that are in the contained quarantine and move them to uncontained. If there were cards in the uncontained quarantine, they would have gone into this pile that gets shuffled into the deck as well. So you may have noticed that some of the skills that we had, this special skill here, move all cards of 1 type from the uncontained quarantine to the contained quarantine, that's worthwhile using so that this card, during the next turn, will end up in the contained quarantine again, rather than at the end of the turn going to the pile that gets shuffled back into the deck. Now, there's a few other icons that you may notice sitting on these player boards and may have seen on the cards on the way through. So this one means that you add another card to the tableau, and that comes out of this deck. Add it to the tableau. If it looks like that, can go anywhere, but if your deck looks like that and you have to add another one, it must go next to the maximum number of cards possible, or the most cards possible. That one we already covered. That's just turn another card over in the tableau. This marking here means that we are going to go to the Raxxon pharmaceutical deck. That is this deck here. When you see that marking, pull up the card, read the text at the top. So this particular card, if Merylwolf is in the game and there are 2 hostile cards face up in the crowd, if that is true, I would keep reading. Now Merylwolf is in the game, but at this point in the game, we don't have the 2 hostile cards face up. If, however, it was while these 2 were still down here, we would then go on to read this next bit of text. It's a bit of story, a bit of fluff, and then we have a choice 1 or choice 2. I'm not going to read them for you because I don't want to spoil the game, but you'll notice if you take choice 1, nothing happens. If you take choice 2, that little symbol there, RP, means that this tracker moves up 1. And as stated before, if that gets up to 8, game over. Once that's been actioned, you put it in the triggered Raxxon pile. If, however, it was at this point in the game and we weren't able to action it, it would go into this pile, and there are cards that will cause us to shuffle them back into this deck at a later stage, so they can have a second go at actioning. This icon means that we are adding disease to the potential crowd. So whenever you see that icon and you need to action it, you'll take one of the cards from here and you will put it into the discard pile, which will then get shuffled into the deck, into this deck to set up for the next turn. If on a skill you see this question mark, what that is saying is that you have an option here. You can do whatever is written next to it. So in this case, quarantine 1 additional card to what's allowed up there. But if you do that, you will need to take another Raxxon card as well. And the only other symbol that we need to deal with is this one, the gas mask. Whenever you see a gas mask, you'll need to move 1 hostile card from the evacuation pile. So you've already managed to get them out of your tableau, but they come from the evacuation pile and they go to the population discard pile. And that will then get shuffled into the deck. The round finishes when either the night phase is triggered or once everyone has passed. Once everyone's passed, we do exactly what I showed you before and set up for the next round. The game finishes when either the Raxxon Pharmaceuticals tracker gets up to 8, in which case everyone loses, or you win by getting all 30 of the healthy cards out of the crowd and up into the stack at the top. I hope that this has helped you get Raxxon to the table. I hope this gives you a good feel for how Raxxon will play. Please go on to watch my Gamesplayed video. If you have any comments or suggestions, please write them below. If you have any games that you wish to be Gamesplaned, please shoot me an email at thegamesplainer@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at thegamesplainer to see what games I've been playing. Check out my blog, thegamesplainer.wordpress.com, to read about my exploits in gaming each week. Subscribe to my videos to keep up to date with the games that I'm gamesplaining, and until next time, enjoy gaming.